Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Jobtopia podcast, the place you go for learning and development. I just discovered this. Is quite nice. I didn't realize this, but the Jobtopia podcast is actually the number one ranked learning and development podcast. So we're very excited about that. So let me give you a little bit of a precursor of what we're going to have today. We're going to look at an industry that we've not talked to before. Okay, this is the executive search. It's high-end retainer. Think of these: you're hiring a CEO, you're hiring a board member. Maybe you're an NFL team and you need to hire a head coach. Maybe you're a college team and you need to bring in a coach. It's pretty exciting. Now, we're going to look at what is a challenger brand, what makes a challenger brand, some of the strategies that a challenger brand might use when they go to market. And stick around to the end because I think we're going to get a little more insight into the world of sports recruiting. Larry, no pressure, coming on the number one learning and development podcast. I'm just going to sit back and turn the controls over to you.
Well, thanks for having me, Tony. Congratulations on your recognition on the work you're doing.
I appreciate that. It's always nice to know that the money you pay to those publications, if you pay enough, you get pushed to the top.
There you go.
So that is, I always make that joke, but no, it's true. It's true. So the executive search space is one that I have a high interest in. When I started in my journey in recruiting, we were contingency search, and we would move up occasionally, and we'd work on a CFO level search. So we got a taste of executive search. But for people who may not really understand specifically, what is executive search? What is retainer? In other words, why do companies choose a executive search firm versus any other option that they might have? Why do they do this?
Yeah, so I think we operate in a space that's usually top of the house roles. So it's the C-suite, it's CEO, CFO, heads of business, board of director type search. And I think the work we do, it's driven by process, not by candidate. So I think other areas of staffing or recruiting are kind of candidate driven. Our world is a client hires us, they want to meet 5 candidates. The candidates are absolutely not in the market, not unemployed. They take extraction, they take persuasion, and the process takes time. But at the end of that process, you get to multiple choices of, call it passive candidates that we've been able to engage to consider a new role. And so that's maybe a little bit of the difference in terms of how clients think about it. It's often also confidential too. We're doing work sometimes where we're replacing someone that maybe it's not public yet, or they might not even know they're being replaced. And so we have to do work in a very confidential manner sometimes.
Yeah, I love that word that you used, extraction, because anyone who's been involved in HR or recruiting, or you're a business leader and you're out there trying to hire someone. Sometimes you meet people and they've got a job and you're like, man, they would be great for what we do. Yeah. How are we going to pull them away? I think that word extraction really kind of highlights the challenge there.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of the Navy SEALs of recruiting, right? I mean, there's different levels, and recruiting provides value all through the chain of entry level to mid level to then senior level. But where we're operating, our clients are very specific. They are expecting top quality that fits exactly what they're looking for, and it takes time to develop a slate of candidates for a client when we're going after that type of a candidate who's already successful in their role today, and we have to convince them to consider something new.
I'm curious, how difficult is it from a sales perspective when you're, pitching the idea of having a company pay you up front? And that's another differentiation into this world of executive search. To give you a juxtaposition, a contingency recruiter, for example, might be asked to find a controller, someone in accounting, and the company's not going to pay the recruiter until that new controller shows up and they're working. Then you can send an invoice. That's considered contingency. So this is a different model completely, Larry, is it not?
Yeah, no, we're paid for the process. We are not paid for the candidate placement. So a client hires us to conduct a process that produces options that gives them the ability to make a decision. And in fact, often they include internal candidates in the process. So they may have one or two internal candidates for a promotion. They want to benchmark those candidates against what might be out in the market. And so they want a fair process to try to get to that right decision. And so, a retained search firm is paid typically a third when you start, a third in 30 days, a third in 60 days, or a third on placement. So you're paid in increments for the process, not for the actual delivery of a candidate, which is the byproduct of a great process anyway. And it's just the market. I mean, where we operate our competitive set that we work with, it's all they're used to retainers. That's how people do business in this space. So it's not unusual at all in the
Right.
work we do.
Yeah, right. Well, and you hit on something there too that I thought was kind of interesting. They're paying you for the process. And I think that's a mindset that people maybe who are in the contingency space, they're not used to that. They're kind of, and I kind of caught myself there for a minute too. I was thinking result. I was thinking, I'm being paid to deliver results. Whereas you've got it, not that you're not wanting results, of course, but you've got a very sophisticated research process. I think you even talk about data. You're very data driven too, which I'm sure we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have a very unusual, very unique growth story. But before we kind of talk about how you've built the company over some, 20 odd years or so, when we talked offline, you kind of categorized your organization as a challenger brand. And this is an area that I really want us to look at today to teach people a little bit more about, what is a challenger brand? So can you just start by just explaining what that means to the marketplace?
Yeah. I mean, to me, when I think about that in our space, it's someone who's disrupting the status quo, someone who's bringing something new to a market and trying to change behaviors in a market. And so, in our world, it's an interesting space. The retained exec search space, there's five big global competitors. Their names like Korn Ferry, Heidrick and Struggles, Russ Reynolds, Spencer Stewart, Egon Zehnder. These firms have been around for 30 plus years. Below that, there's 10,000 retained search boutiques, but there was really nobody in the middle that was challenging those big five. And the barriers of challenge were you need to be global, you need to be supporting clients all around the world, you need to have scale and size. So that was part of it, is just someone rising up to challenge what was called a group of competitors that didn't have competition in the work that they did in a lot of ways. And then the second piece besides size and scale was methodology. So you alluded on it, but we've tried to think about how do we approach our clients with a differentiated offering. And we've centered that around providing data and technology to empower a great decision. And that goes in tandem with really people. But I think our industry is somewhat old fashioned. It is not innovated because of the nature of the competitors have been around for so long and haven't had a need to evolve. And for Wes, we've been able to come in and disrupt the business model a bit, be a challenger in size and structure and how we do things. So I think that's how we think about ourselves, that challenger brand, disruptive player in the space.
I think you said something there really interesting. You had to understand and know what made the top five the top five. Like, what are the characteristics and attributes of those top five? So for, as you mentioned, the 10,000 or however many thousands of companies that were out there, which of those actually could compete with some of those key aspects that maybe a client would be looking for? So you mentioned, global and scope. Well, that's automatically, that knocks out. How many companies does that knock out?
It knocks out 90% right there. Right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for you to be a challenger brand, you knew you had to increase your scope.
For sure. Yeah. So
Okay.
geography was one piece of it, right? That was an important part to compete with clients. So we have global multinational clients. And for us just to work with them in the US, when they said we have needs in China, we have needs in Singapore or in Brazil, it would have gone by default to one of the big five. And so, or a local boutique. And I think in our space, big clients didn't want to have 35 local boutiques in every country to go to. So it became easy to say, I'll work with one of the scaled exec search firms. But we've come along as now an alternative to the big five because we can follow a relationship around the world. We can support work with the global multinational clients wherever they might be.
Larry, why do you have to have boots on the ground though around the world? Maybe that's something that I'm missing because we're in such a diverse kind of remote kind of workplace. I do know you have offices now globally, so why do you need that local presence for this type of work?
Well, there's nuance to markets, and I think about our Brazil team. We have 30 plus people in Sao Paulo and Rio, and I've been down many times in Brazil having lunch with our team. And across the table, there's the CEO of this company, and there's the CEO of that company, and they know their local market. So when a client engages our Brazil team, they know the talent on the ground. They have access, and they can get to them. So I think being in a market where you have relationship and credibility does matter in terms of reaching the executives that we want to reach and understanding the nuance of what's different about a Brazil culture versus, a Chicago-based company, or what's different from a German-based company and that's trying to enter the U.S. So I think there's that advantage to having the combination of both local and global.
That makes perfect sense. A lot of our leadership is Korean here, and so we help a lot of South Korean companies move into the U.S. And like, if we didn't have any understanding of the Korean culture, we would struggle. We would severely struggle to understand the hierarchy, business cultures, et cetera. And so I think that's to your point.
Yeah.
Business is probably just done different. Maybe they drink 3 espressos, at a coffee shop, maybe before they talk business, and an American might just blast in there and,
Yeah, you need, and that's for us having locals in markets that have been experienced, that know their customs, but they also know the companies and the executives has been a key part to us being successful.
So for other companies that consider themselves or want to be challenger brands, are there other techniques or strategies or, kind of business planning that they need to consider to challenge those more established companies?
Yeah, I mean, the other way, people think about it is challenging the business model of how you price or how you deliver, right? I mean, so it could be we've had people come into our space to think price and maybe a different delivery of talent would disrupt the space. And I think we've seen that in other sectors be successful. For us, there's still that element of clients are used to retained search being a certain way. And so we can deviate a bit in delivery, but not completely. So I think ours is more of bringing added value in an existing process. But no, a company could say, hey, we're going to think differently about price. We're going to deliver. We've seen it through the years in search where people say, I'm not going to give you a full search. Pay me half of what a search costs. I'll just give you 5 candidates and you run with them. And it's less cost, but less help. But, it hasn't really stuck. I mean, we're in a space that price isn't the deciding factor. It's quality and access and making sure the right hire takes place. Because for us, the cost of a bad hire of a CEO or a leader is significant.
Touch on that a little bit, Larry. I've seen studies about this. What can you share, like exponentially, like what the cost of the bad hire really is at some of these executive levels?
Well, I mean, you see studies 5 or 10 times the salary, but a CEO who doesn't execute a strategy, who causes income to drop by 30%, it's hundreds of millions of dollars of market cap very easily, right? So, where we're operating, it's table stakes to pay a fee compared to the impact a leader should have across a company's bottom line, their market cap, their public company perception. So that's why it's so important. And we're in a space that the sensitivity is to the right person, not to not to price where we operate. And I know other sectors of human capital, that's not I mean, people are important, but it's price is a bigger driver of selection, I think, in mid-level or some of the early stage recruiting that goes on for sure.
Yeah, I think as you move down the pyramid, naturally at the lower level, there are more people to choose from.
Yes.
When you're in the rarefied air of there is one CEO, and by the way, this is our industry, this is what we're preparing to do. There's only a handful of people in the world that we think can take us through the transformation. Now, I want to ask you a little bit about transformation. Obviously, everyone's probably sick of hearing, AI this, AI that. But when it comes to business transformation and AI, where do you see this going for our industry, for search? Is this is this a big curveball for people because we're so used to the human touch? I mean, at this level, CEO, I mean, I don't even know how receptive they would be to having some kind of an AI interaction with them.
Yeah. So I view it in two spheres. So first, how it's going to make us all more efficient in not just the human capital recruiting industry, but all industries. So we're all going to be benefiting from all the technologies that are available that help us be more efficient, to find pools of candidates, to automate tasks. And I think that will not be a competitive advantage in 12 or 24 months. Everybody will be on level ground. I mean, I equate it to when the internet came out, right? I mean, recruiting used to be with company directories and phone books, and the internet came out, and everybody has that. So AI is going to drive us all to be way more efficient. Now, the second piece of it is, can you innovate and can you create something distinctly different? And so we are spending some money there. We have some software development things that we're looking at that would be proprietary. That could separate, I think, companies' value proposition one to the other for a period of time. I do think the outreach and a lot of the work that goes on, there's going to be tasks that are easily done through AI at certain levels. So I do think there's an impact to our industry, and probably less so at the high end for sure, but definitely an impact.
Yeah, it might show up more on the research side.
Yeah.
It might show up more on move through this data set and then, okay, now we've narrowed down industries, companies, regions of the world, and then we jump in and start using our contacts to, as you say, try to extract confidentially.
Yeah,
probably the way that would go.
Yeah,
all right,
it's exciting. I mean, I think we should all embrace it and continue to learn and try and see, and it's gonna it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Now, going back to this challenger brand status and the things that you've done to challenge the big five, this obviously required quite a bit of capital to do this. And you do have a kind of a unique story, one that we don't really hear that often in this industry. You had a particular go-to-market strategy to be a challenger brand, and walk us through why this is kind of unique for our space.
Yeah, and just briefly, so I came into this space 20 plus years ago, not as a executive recruiting search person. I was a business person. So I founded my first business right out of college with a couple partners in the financial service space. It was a business that we lent money to doctors and hospitals to buy capital equipment. And we were lucky that business ended up Inc. 500 growth company. We ended up taking it public on the NASDAQ. We got it to a couple $100 million in revenue and sold it to American Express through a 17-year period. And that was chapter one. And so I used all levels of recruiting in that journey, from temp to perm to exec retained to middle management to sales hiring. So I had a view. And then when I started ZRG, I just saw there was a opportunity to do it a little bit better. That my experience working with recruiting firms, especially at the high end, was all I got was a resume and I got an opinion, and I paid a pretty big fee for that. But the problem was the opinion from the search person I only agreed with half the time anyway. And so I always felt, how could we bring more data information to the process of hiring. And I thought, in my role as a CEO, I would have liked to have information rather than opinion. And so that formed kind of the foundation of what we built at ZRG. And then through that journey, I think we've been, in our space a little bit unique. We raised private equity capital about 10 years ago. We decided to go on a more proactive growth phase. And that took us on a journey, from a peer search firm. The first 4 years with that private equity firm, we started at 10 million in revenues. We grew it to 40 million. We brought in a second private equity firm about 5 years ago. And the vision then, Tony, was, okay, we have a growing search platform, but our clients need more. They need high-end interim help. They need scale-up help. They need some human capital advisory work. How do we take the position we have with CEOs, boards, private equity sponsors, and serve them in bigger ways? And so the evolution was brought in the second round of capital, grown it now from 40 million to over 280 million. We're now 650 employees, and through that journey, it's been led by organic hiring. We've done 15 plus acquisitions over the last 5 years. And so the capital has fueled the strategy, which has allowed us to diversify into a broader, human capital solutions provider, is what we consider ourselves today.
And you just kind of kept expanding your footprint, offering, as you said, interim services or consulting services, or you've got this embedded recruiting platform that you put people, on site. And so you have been able to, instead of just trying to offer it in a small scale because you're having to compete at such a global level, this is where you've used acquisitions to acquire larger companies to give you that footprint.
Yeah, that's exactly been the strategy. And so we knew what we wanted to build, and we organically have taken the steps to that. So I'll give you our interim business as an example. We saw an opportunity with our client base that they needed high-end interim help. Private equity firm replacing a CFO, we would do the CFO search, but they would say, we are going to go to one of the consulting firms, an Alvarez and Marcel or one of these firms, for 4 months for an interim and pay $100,000 a month for an interim to fill this role. And we said, well, we can help you do that at a quicker and probably more cost-effective level. So we organically built a high-end interim business to, support the office of the CFO, and then it became the CHRO. And then over time, we've made several acquisitions on top of that organic build. One of the interesting ones, we bought a business in the higher education space. So a business called The Registry that places presidents, deans, academic leaders in universities. And so that's high-end senior level interim work. And so what we've seen is, we fill a space for top-end interim support that goes in tandem with whatever the business problem they're facing. While we may solve it with an executive search, there's gaps or work that needs to be done along that same timeline.
Yeah, that's a really smart way to do it too, because oftentimes you are trying to solve a problem for the company, and it's not enough just to bring in the leader, but you actually need people who can come in and actually help with the lift.
Yeah. Especially true in a CFO. We do, 100 CFO searches a year for our client base. A lot of times, if it's a private equity backed company, $200 million revenue company, they say, we need a strategic CFO that can scale us and do all these high end things. But then they get in there, it's like, oh my goodness, we don't have the right accounting system. We
can't even close in 3 days. How can we do this?
Yeah, we need reporting. So it's like they need help on the ground, but they need strategy. So in that case, it's been helpful for us that we'll bring in kind of the SWAT team to deal with that 4-month surge to get systems and reporting up to speed. CFO derives it, but then they're not dragged into work that isn't necessarily what they were hired to do, because you don't always get hands-on and strategic, in the same hire. And so it's been a good complement.
Yeah, and I would think that does a lot for your onboarding and for stickiness. You want those people that you place to stick and to stay, because it's, like you said, it's such a long process. Yeah, I think that I really think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so that is an unusual, not unusual. We do see it in the business world. We do see acquisitions to round out a company's offering. I just don't know that I've seen it that much, honestly, in the search space. I think that's, but you come from a finance background, so you saw the benefit, of selling to American Express, which is kind of unusual. I don't know. I'm thinking about American Express buying medical device. I guess I don't see that, but it worked.
Well, it's funny in big companies. It was a time, and we had a lending business. We lent money to doctors and hospitals. They were expanding at that time out of their credit card world into more lending products for businesses. That cycle 7 years later changed. So let's get back to our core. So if you look at the cycle of big companies, it's here's what we do. Now we expand our services. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then back to the core. So I think it's kind of the cycle of they were looking to add new things later on in the cycle. They sold those assets off to a bank and said we shouldn't be in those spaces. So we see that a lot with
You really do. I mean, it's expand, contract.
yeah.
Let's centralize, let's decentralize.
Yeah.
Let's have, top down, let's do matrix. I mean, it's just constantly changing. By the way, be kind of curious, of all the industries that you work in, particularly over in executive search, with the politics as they are, with trying to get onshoring with tariffs and such, what are you seeing? Are you hearing more chatter of companies that really are wanting to come here, move here, start being established here to try to avoid some of that? I mean, from your point of view, what are you hearing?
It's a little early. I mean, we have an industrial practice, and we help companies build out operations teams, a little bit of plant management stuff, and a little bit of there. Actually, kind of the opposite's happening right now. I mean, I have a team that's over in the Middle East right now, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi, talking about AI bills and tech bills. And if what the president recently talked about is just the investment spending in the Middle East and some of the commitments. So we see that like it shifts to where the dollars are being spent, right? So now AI spending is on a lot of people's mind. There's a shortage of that talent in many geographic markets. And so we're being asked to come in and help deal with those kind of problems. I think we're in a world where certain sectors are always up, certain sectors are down. We're I call it an all-weather business platform. We have 11 business lines. Yeah, because I mean, for a while, aerospace and defense that we're in was soft post-election. Now there's certainty around the spend, and so that sector's heating up. The tariffs can slow decision making down, but then it'll speed up. The other thing we've done, Tony, is that we work across, call it Fortune 500, middle market, private equity, and venture firms. So we've seen that the uncertainty in the market, February, March of this year, the big companies freeze up. But the middle market private equity companies don't, and they keep moving through uncertainty. And so having, I think for us, diversity of industry, region, and even kind of client size and scope has allowed us to not see the volatility that if you're a boutique in just technology, for example, you would have felt a lot more ups and downs than we feel.
Yeah, I think that is it's fortunate, that you're not in that old 80-20, model, which is what happens with so many service providers. You get into an 80-20 situation and then something happens to your 80 and now you're having to lay off. Yeah, as I was saying, I think you're fortunate, that you may not be in that 80-20 situation because you're so diverse. If one business unit or something happens, it's not catastrophic, because there are so many cycles in business now that you're global and you've got so many different, facets now that you really can, when one pillar goes down, the other pillar goes up.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're hoping everything doesn't go down at once like it did in the pandemic. That was a rare event. So.
That's right. That's right. Well, I guess that's why they call those the black swan.
Yes.
So I kind of made a teaser at the beginning about these sports placements, and I think when you and I were kind of chatting offline, I think people might find that fairly interesting. The fact that you've got one of your divisions, what is it, a turnkey?
Yes.
And they get involved. So, look, obviously, when a team, college is looking for a head coach, or NFL, and there's obviously lots of sports teams, but I'm as you can see, I'm kind of into the football, so we'll stick with the football here for a minute.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about like this search process to hire a head coach? It sounds kind of glamorous, like a CEO search of a company that no one's heard about. It's important, but when it's your favorite team and they've just lost their head coach, like how do you guys get involved and how do you go about this process? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so we give you a little bit of the story. So we bought a business 5 years ago that was in the sports recruiting space called Turnkey. Great operator, Len Perna, who worked for the Tigers, he worked for the Dallas Stars, and built this business. And we had a vision to really buy it and grow it. And so the vision then was Len did a lot in professional sports. We wanted to add college sports. We wanted to add Europe. We wanted to add the Asian regions. And so that was we started out to do it. And so over time, it's been fun. That business is now the largest sports recruiting business in North America. We do head coaches, athletic directors. I'm proud of the fact, like in the Sweet 16 basketball season that just ended, we placed 9 of the 16 head coaches or athletic directors at the schools.
9 of the 16 that were in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. So I mean, we do college head coaches, we do athletic directors. In the pro side, we do some head coach there, but we did the WNBA head coach for the LA Sparks. We've done work. You said the Atlanta Falcons, helping with their head coach search, and we do other interesting work. Like we did the president of the NCAA search, where they wanted to bring in someone to try to help solve the challenges the NCAA is facing.
What a mess they're in.
Certainly not an easy job, right? And that's
with the NIL, that is really, really challenging. Now they're paying them above board. They're not paying them under the table anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, so you love football, so I'll tell you a story like how it works. It is fast and it's quick in coach recruiting. It is not like the process on the corporate side. The corporate side, it's a 3-month process to go from start to build a slate to interview 5 candidates to make a decision. Like it is a journey to get to a great hire. In sports, it's quick. So I'll give you one fun story. So I got a call from one of my college sports guys and said, "Hey, you're gonna see a corporate jet charge of $25,000. Don't worry about it. We're gonna get reimbursed." I said, "Well, what is that for?" He said, "Well, the University of Texas is flying in Steve Sarkisian interview." And I'm saying, well, I'm watching the news and Texas is pretty excited about their current head coach. But behind the scenes, we're picking up Sarkisian in a jet, flying into Texas. 3 days later, he's their head coach that they announce. So it's like stealth, quick. Oftentimes it's 1 or 2 candidates they've identified that we have to help facilitate the outreach. We facilitate even working with the agents, making sure like we're literally on the plane with that coach, flying him out there. Like that's how it happened. And it's great. If you look at the change for University of Texas's program, they've been pretty good since their
They've been great. They've been great. In fact, Ewers just got drafted, their quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're proud of the fact we placed the college football coach of the year, Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. I mean, that's, again, a program.
That was a great story.
Football. Now, got coach of the year. They made the playoffs, not something Indiana's known for. So leadership matters, right? I mean, you get the right leader who can attract talent into a program today. And college sports is big business now. It is not just, fun stuff on a Saturday to watch a game. It is big dollar business.
Yes, it is. We don't talk a lot about leadership strategies, but if we were to do so, I could see a part 2 for us, Larry, because you've had exposure. You mentioned, 100 CFO or CEO searches a year. You probably do more than that. So you hear the word leadership the way most of us hear other common phrases. So there is a unique way that you go about identifying, assessing, and ensuring that they truly are. And I think that could be a really interesting follow-up for us, for those that are just now getting exposed to you and your brand. It's kind of exciting. I really appreciate you taking some time out today to share with us this Challenger brand. It sounds like you're beyond Challenger now, though. My goodness. You're the one being challenged now. Come on, you've got these 10,000 that are probably chasing after you now.
Yeah, no, we've hit a nice size and scale. We've got bigger aspirations ahead, and we're still an underdog in many settings, but in certain niches, we've been able to carve off some really strong market presence. Sports, a great example, and we're proud of what we built there with a really good team at ZRG.
I hear humble and I hear hungry.
Yeah. Yeah,
A little bit of
growth is
both.
fun. I mean, it's great building a business. And I'd say, Tony, you talk about, I've been fortunate that I've had access to capital, and capital has
That's
fueled
right.
investment growth. I mean, without capital, we wouldn't be 650 employees and wouldn't have the revenue level. So it's allowed me to invest, and build. So I'm thankful, that we've been able to attract capital and actually make sure our investors get good returns, which I've always been able to do in my career.
Yeah, well, and here's to a profitable and more successful 2025. Larry, good talking to you again. I'm glad people got a chance to learn a little bit more about this and the interesting world, the ever-changing world of leadership and extraction.
I like that. Well, thank you, Tony, for having me on, and congratulations again to you on your success
Thank
and
you.
what you're doing. So
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
And hey, there's no pressure on me. I just bring in the leaders to talk about it. I just facilitate it. So, I'll get the metrics for this. If it tanked, it's your fault,
There you
and
go.
I'm off the hook.
All right.
All right,
Excellent.
everybody. Good
Thank you,
seeing
Tony.
you again. Take care.
Bye-bye.